just ignore my sniffles in the background.
You're good. I did look at your questions. I just wanted to make sure it's okay that I am not Indian born.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I am like American born Indian kind
Mm-hmm.
of.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely. I noticed a lot of your questions are about the
Yes. The
territory.
yes.
So that's not maybe as applicable to me. I can share my parents or my
Yeah.
grandparents and their
Yeah.
story. I'm more
Yeah.
of
And
like
that's okay. Yeah.
my dad actually, my parents came to America quite young. So my dad was actually
Okay.
in grade school
Okay.
when he came. Yeah, so he's pretty
Okay.
assimilated into like he's grown up in New York his whole life,
Okay.
assimilated into American culture, doesn't really have an Indian accent. Like they're pretty
Yes.
American. Both my grandparents went to college here in the States.
Okay.
Um, and we're both very involved in the healthcare field, so they both spoke English to us.
Yes.
But I'm the only one I want to say, excuse me. I'm the oldest in my side. I'm the oldest granddaughter, firstborn child, and so I'm the only one out of all my cousins that understand and can speak Malayalam. The
Okay.
rest of them
Okay.
don't really know, and I'm not even that great at it. I'm more like conversational. I can
Yeah.
get by in India probably. I don't know that I can like write a book, but or preach a sermon,
Yeah.
but I know
Yeah.
enough to get by. So, but yeah, my parents are just more American. My grandparents both spoke English, like they both speak
Okay.
English. All my grandparents actually speak English. So I didn't grow up with that typical kind of super Northern Indian type of
Yeah.
experience. Now, the exposure I had to my culture was very much through my church. So I grew
Okay.
up around a lot of Indians, grew up
Okay.
around a lot of family. Um, New York has a very big Indian
Yes.
population,
In
obviously, and
community.
so
Yeah.
a lot of the communities are very faith driven. Culturally, they stay together. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my exposure. I listened to a lot of Malayali preaching,
Mm-hmm.
listened to a lot of Malayali worship songs growing up, and so things like that. But I just wanted to let you know that's like I don't
Yeah.
know what exactly. I hope that's relevant because that's really my story.
No.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I knew that. I had a feeling that because I've spoken to a couple of people who've had similar stories like yours, where they were born here and their parents came here for maybe for college or for grad school, and then they met each other and the families agreed
Yeah.
to the wedding, because it's if I because we've been trying to find people from, especially women, because I'm focusing on the women part of it, from different backgrounds. If I have to look at everybody who has came here as a child or grew up here, um, or kind of moved here as an adult, most of them are in their 60s or their 70s. And
Gotcha.
so the sample pool becomes very small. And we're trying to find, because the focus is really on the future of South Indian women in North America, South Indian faith based. And so if everybody's a nurse and everybody's a doctor, then we don't have any kind of differences in the way we can pull the themes together. So we kind of had to open up our sample pool to being like, okay, we may have to speak to people who maybe were born here and were raised here, but who have ties to an Indian community, in terms of their cousins, their families, uncles, aunts, and just how the community has impacted their formation, because it is quite hard to separate your culture and your faith. They tend to be very interwoven, but then there are also challenges that you face as you kind of navigate life in a country which is your own, but not technically your own, and you're
Mm,
always trying to bridge that gap. So yeah, I kind of knew going into it that's why I kind of said in the first two questions that it might not work for you that way, because if your family didn't come from there, so that's okay. But I think for some of the other things, with
Yeah.
being raised in the Indian community, and how your parents raised you and your siblings, and just the Indian church, they must have had an impact on you guys as
Oh
you
yeah.
kind of grew up. Yeah. So yeah, so we could probably talk about that. I mean, if we skip the first question, what are some of the memories of church and ministry and your family? Can you share a little bit about that, and how that has impacted
Yeah.
you today?
Yeah, I think, I mean, even I mean, my grandfather has some, I can share the first
Uh-huh.
answer from the
The
words of my
migratory journey, yeah,
grandfather.
how he
Um,
felt, yeah.
but like my grandfather came here, didn't have much money. He came from Kottayam, and so
Hmm.
that is in Kerala, and his family owned a guest house there, and so they were hosting
Okay.
diplomats. So his father was kind of like a schmoozer. Like he would like host and entertain, and as a result, became an alcoholic. And so
uh,
a lot of his brothers were trained in this kind of like hosting, making drinks, and knowing how to like
mhm.
hospitality. Like
Yeah.
hospitality was like the family's thing, but because of the exposure to alcohol and like just giving alcohol to their guests and then and drinking with them, and
Mm,
they started to drink very heavily. And
mm,
when my grandfather moved to the States, he himself was not a drinker. He had asthma and like he
mm,
had like a lot of health
mm,
conditions. He wasn't the most healthy person, so he just naturally wasn't drinking a lot. Um, but he knew how to make drinks. He knew how to bartend. So when he actually came to America, that was the way he started to make a living for himself.
mm,
He actually, there's a bar in the Empire State Building on the ground floor. He was employed there when he first came, and he
mm.
was, but he was involved with a very strict kind of, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called the New Testament Church, or
Okay.
in India, it's called TPM, the Pentecostal
Okay.
Mission.
The
They're
Pentecostal
known,
mission. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah, they're
have heard
known
of
for
them. Yeah.
wearing like only white saris and
Only
very
only
strict.
white, and yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
I've
super
actually
strict.
worshipped in their church a couple of times. I have a very close friend from college who's part of the TPM. So I've been to their
Okay,
church twice
yeah,
with
that
her
was in
and
India.
her. Yeah, yeah.
But when he came to America, there were like it's not just Indian in America. Like there's a mix of
Yeah.
different races and cultures, which I thought was really awesome. But there was a white pastor here that was there was a white pastor there in the States that housed him because he was coming from the TPM church here
Okay.
in the U.S.
Yeah.
He came to the church here in New York and was being housed by this pastor and
Yeah.
the faith home there. And the pastor there told him, like, you shouldn't probably be serving drinks if you don't believe
Yeah.
in this is not what the Lord
Yeah.
wants, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So then my grandfather made a decision to stop doing that. He decided to
Mm,
go to Hunter College, pursue his degree in dietetics and nutrition. And so he became a dietitian after that. Shortly afterwards, my grandmother came. She was a teacher here in India, and they were actually, I think they were living in Bombay at the time. She's from Changanore, and then they got married, stayed in Kottayam, and then they moved to Bombay, and that's where she was teaching. She was a teacher there,
okay.
and then she moved a little after my grandfather moved. She moved with my dad, my uncle, and
Okay.
they came to the States. And once she came to the States, she decided to go to nursing school. Well, she actually did
Mm,
not go to nursing school first. I think he was working for a while. She was just there, and then by the time she had a daughter in the
okay.
States, and then once the daughter was born, she decided to go to nursing school, and she
Go
became
to
a nurse
school.
quite
Okay.
later in life. She was in her 40s, I
Yeah.
believe, when she went to
Okay.
nursing school. And so then that was kind of their journey. They were still very involved in the church, and that was, I think, their lifeline for a lot of their migratory journey here. And so that was something I'm sure, like, my grandmother still speaks English, honestly, and she would be
Okay.
someone you can also view if you wanted to. But
Oh yeah.
she's very good. Yeah, she's
Okay.
very good at, like, she still knows a lot of this stuff and she can tell you a lot about her experience. But
Okay.
my grandfather passed away in 2021. But
Okay.
um but yeah, their journey, I mean, he used to talk about his journey all the time. So that's why I'm like, I know a little bit about it. But
Yeah.
that was their journey. I was obviously born here in the States. And so I grew up in a Christian home, and both of my all my parents, I grew up in a Pentecostal home, so I don't really necessarily identify as Pentecostal now. I'm more non-denominational, but grew up Pentecostal,
Okay.
attending Pentecostal churches. My dad's still, a, they all consider themselves Pentecostal and stuff.
Pentecostal. Okay.
Um, and so that was a church I grew up in, and it was an Indian American church, so there was a lot of
Okay.
Malayalam speaking. So I grew up hearing a lot of Malayalam preaching, especially during fasting and prayer meetings and stuff like that. So that was my exposure to, like,
Okay.
the culture a lot through the church was where
The
the
church. Yeah.
language and, like, songs, things like that came through the
Mm-hmm.
church. Food, I mean, my parents cooked Indian food. We ate a lot of Indian food. I loved Indian food. Like, that stuff was bound to be there, but I don't think the language immersion,
Mm.
I don't know that I would have had that experience had it not been through the church. So the church
Yeah.
helped me learn the language a little bit more. I was listening a lot to, like, preachings and songs, devotional songs, and there were also older amachis in the church that I would
Yes.
like have to communicate with. Although my grandparents all spoke English, there were other aunties and uncles in the church
Yeah.
that didn't. So that was my kind of exposure. I didn't go to India much growing up. I think I went to India maybe like 3, 4, 5 times,
Yeah.
maybe 3 or 4 times. But then when we would go, it would be for 3, 4 weeks at a time. It wasn't just short
Yeah.
trips. It was like
Yeah.
3 weeks. But when I got married, I started to go a lot more often.
Okay.
My husband's grandparents actually lived in India, so they were going more often. They went every
Okay.
year for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I would go less often, but for longer periods of time. But because I had such a rich cultural, like,
Exposure or
immersion
yeah. Yeah.
in India and
Immersion.
in
Yeah.
New York, I felt very connected to Indian
Yeah.
roots. And
Yeah.
then outside of the church, Long Island, where I grew up, I started off in Queens and then moved further out into Long Island growing up, but very populated, very, like, Indian, like,
Mm-hmm.
heavy. I went to
Yeah.
school with a bunch of Indians, not just Malayalis, but, like, a lot of South Indians, but, like, also
Yeah.
North Indians,
Yeah.
Pakistanis, and all of them. So I did not feel at any point like I wasn't connected to
Mm-hmm.
my culture. Like, it felt very much a part of who I am. I didn't experience I truly did not experience any racism until I got married and moved out of
Okay.
New York. So yeah, like, that was really kind of my memories of that. Like, I remember going to, like, a lot of fasting prayer,
Yes.
cottage
Yeah.
meetings, fasting and prayer
Prayer
meetings,
meetings.
being in
Yeah.
people's homes,
Yeah.
um, you know, listening to a lot of preaching. And there were some times where they would have translation and a lot of times they didn't. And
Mm-hmm.
my parents hosted a lot at their house, like a lot of prayer meetings. And so there were a lot of times where it was just me and my brother, and we wouldn't have translation for just the two of us. And so my grandmother would try to translate for us. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of like my memories of that. Feel free to, like,
Yeah.
ask.
But
I
that
don't know, like, what you need to
yeah,
know,
no,
so
it's
just, like,
actually
feel free to
interesting.
ask.
No, it's very I was just because I'm um probably at some point I may write something on the differences in the Malayali culture and the Tamilian culture
Mhm.
of Christians, here in North America, because we for after we moved to Dallas in 2006, we were attending a CSI church, because I'm CSI, I'm from the Church of South India, but I'm CSI from Chennai, or from the Tamil Nadu diocese and from Madras. So that's where I'm familiar with. I grew up. I mean, yes, I've been to, because I went to I did my master's in a college in Tamil Nadu called Karunya, which was
I've
founded
heard of
and
it.
run by, yeah. So that's where I met Chadwick and Ben and all of them. So because I kind of went to, it's a pretty charismatic school, and so the praise and worship sessions and praying in praying in tongues and fasting prayer, all of that was very normal for me. So when I graduated from there, I went to AG and I spent a lot of time there. But my husband is from a CSI background, and so once we got married, we kind of stuck to a CSI church, and that's where we've always been. So we went to a CSI church for 14 years here in Dallas, in Irving. So it's part of the Madhya Kerala diocese. Um, Part at that point, and then in the middle they moved to the diocese in Chicago. There is a CSI diocese which is part of the Madhya Kerala diocese here in Chicago, and so they kind of merged with that. But so Achan always had the service in English. It was started as a Malayalam church, but because even his kids couldn't understand the service,
Mm,
they switched it to English, which made it open for people from different CSI backgrounds to come. So you had
yeah, yeah.
CSI from Chennai and from Tamil Nadu and from Kerala coming in, and it's always been interesting for us to see the differences between the way the Tamilians raise their families and the Malayalam speaking people raise their families, and just the difference in the culture and the community immersion is very different. And so the common theme that I've heard from a lot of the people that I've spoken to is that the community of people in Indian church, especially if it's a Malayalam speaking church, they form the children in a different way versus an English speaking church. Because I think the moment the language changes, there's just, you start to assimilate to American culture also. And so there's something that happens. As long as you're talking in Tamil and you're doing things in Tamil or Malayalam, the ties to your culture are a little more,
Mm,
especially when you talk to older people and to the adults. It's not just the food, but something in the language ties you in. And
mhm,
we've noticed even here in Dallas, because there's so many CSI churches in Dallas, I think next to New York and everything, Dallas has such a huge, huge collection. Many of the Malayalam congregations also have language school. They kind of have classes after Sunday service, like from 1 to 3 or 2 to 4, where the kids come and learn how to speak the language. And so you have all the kids who go to the church, they also learn at least spoken Malayalam, like the basics of the language. They don't completely grow up unaware of the language. Whereas with the Tamil speaking people, the language often disappears as the children grow up.
mm,
There is no ties to it. And so with our kids, because I grew up in the Middle East, I'm not very fluent in Tamil either. I can speak it, I can't read and write it. And the longer I spend time in Chennai or in Tamil Nadu, the language becomes more fluent because I'm thinking in Tamil. And so the words start to flow. All of the vocabulary comes back. But I didn't grow up reading and writing it. And even though my mom and dad spoke to me in Tamil, they never insisted I speak back to them in Tamil. So I never really learned it. And with our children, when they were little, my husband insisted that they go to Tamil school. So we
mm.
have a Tamil school here in Dallas. It's part of the California Tamil school. And our son went for 4 years, I think. No, I think our daughter went for 4 or 5 years,
Oh,
and our son went for 2 to 3 years. My husband was a teacher there. So a bunch of his friends were part of the staff there. And so they were like, you should come and join us. And it's now grown to like 200 students. It's massive. And so despite them going for 4 years, getting them to speak is really, really hard. um, they
mm,
they they can read it, they can kind of write words if you tell them. And if you like, now that they were in Chennai for the last few weeks, they can read the buses and the billboards and the stores. And our son has gotten a little bit better about speaking it because he wants that connection to his grandparents. And
Mm,
even though everybody speaks English, like all four grandparents speak English fluently, he still wants
mm,
that connection. So he makes that effort. But I've noticed that in North America, especially in the East Coast and in Dallas, the Malayalam speaking churches, the culture and the community, they do they do give a lot of importance to the spoken language. So it it helps. I think it helps the kids growing up here to have something a little bit more tangible than
mm.
just a chicken curry and rice and a vegetable. It's more than just the food. It just adds that there's just something more tangible because of the language. And
Of
um
course.
I it does worry me that because our kids don't know how to speak the language after we are gone, it's going to die out in the next few generations. I mean, even in the next generation the language will die out. And that is something. I mean, I'm not even sure how to address that except to encourage them to continue to try to find a connection to the language in some way or
Mm,
the other. So obviously, your parents and your family were super involved in the church, like because you said that they were part of the cottage prayer meeting and
mhm.
sermons, and so faith obviously played a big role in mom and dad's life and your grandparents' life. Did you live as a joint family system with your grandparents or your mom's parents, or were you like a nuclear family?
So, so no, we grew up with actually, yes, my grandparents and my aunt and uncles were living
Okay.
in the house at one point. That was like up until I was like 6 or 7. And then
Okay.
after that, it was just my parents and my dad's
Okay.
parents and my
Okay.
brother. And then they moved to my uncle's and aunt's house. And so I think now it's been longer that we've been a nuclear family.
Mm.
And then in 2020, they moved back during the pandemic. My grandparents moved
Yes.
back into my parents' house. And so, but they lived like my aunt and uncle's house was five
Yeah.
minutes from my parents' house. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like, they were with us pretty much our whole
Yeah.
lives. My grandparents on my dad's side lived in New York, like all off of one road. They never had their own home. Like
Okay.
they were always living with us and like
Yes.
paid for our home, like helped pay
Oh,
for
okay.
our homes and
Okay.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was like they co-owned the homes with us, and that was like their thing. And it worked out. They wanted to stay near, their kids and stuff. This is my dad's parents. My mom's parents, it's a different situation. They were living in New York as well. They actually, not recently, but in the last 10, 15 years, moved to Dallas and have
Oh,
been in
okay.
Dallas ever. So yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But
Okay.
they
Yeah.
were like alone in New York. They were living near Rockland area, like Yonkers,
Okay.
and they were alone there. And so we would go and visit them once a month. Kids growing up, and they were very involved with the CPM church there in Yonkers, and so
Mm.
yeah, that was kind of their thing. And
And I'm sure that
we,
had a really big impact on you and your brother being raised with the grandparents kind of
mhm,
around you the whole time. It is
mhm,
a different way of life because they are part of the family and you don't kind of get into the nuclear family system because obviously they may have an input in what you do and how you behave, and they kind of care for you when your parents are at work.
mhm.
How was the impact of having your grandmother and your mother kind of around you for the majority of your childhood, kind of growing up in
Yeah,
your teenage years and all?
it was like a pro and a con. There were like pros and cons to it, obviously. Like, I think, especially upon losing my grandfather in 2021, I think my brother and I can both say, like, it's ultimately like such a blessing to have my
Mm,
grandparents near me. And I think the good always outweighs the bad when it comes to that. Like, we've seen so much blessing and learned so much just with having them around us.
Hmm.
And the fact that they spoke English was even better because it just helped us better connect with
Yes.
them. Like, do I worry about the fact that, like, yeah, I am worried about my daughter not
Mm.
knowing the language. I mean, I myself, my husband barely speaks it. So it's like
Okay.
there's only one of us that knows enough. And I don't know that
Yeah.
I would teach Mariah, like, I don't know that I could. I would probably have to go to a Malayalam school or something.
Yeah.
But like, I barely speak. My brother-in-laws don't speak at all. Their wives, one of them speaks fluent Malayalam and I think reads and writes. But like other than that, I'm thinking about all my cousins, like in my first cousins, like no one is really
Mm.
they may know a little bit of speaking. I know the most out of all of
Yeah.
them, and I'm thinking about both sides. I know the most out of all of them, and I'm not sure that I can, like, even my own child, her being here, like I'm not sure. But one thing I will say is that like having my grandparents there, although I do think there's an added connection or benefit to the language, I think the value of culture is still translatable or communi- communicated through the older generation, like so like grandparents, having grandparents there, the importance of that. Like my parents, my dad is so like annoyingly stresses the importance of legacy and culture and
Yeah.
family. And
Hmm.
so I feel like I knew that because of the way he impressed that upon me.
Hmm.
And I intend on like I want my parents to be involved in my daughter's life and like
Hmm.
my husband's parents to be involved. So we plan on fully having them like just I want the experience to be like I had it, not like my husband had it where his grandparents were in India. We're
Mm.
blessed enough to have both sets of our
Both
parents in
sets.
America.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have that. I'd like to live near at least one set so that they're,
Yeah.
close to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like I was
Yeah.
close to my grandparents because my husband was not as
Yeah.
close to his grandparents like I was close to mine. And I think he sees the value that it had on my life and my brother's life. And he wants that for our kid as well. And so I definitely feel like there was a benefit. Um, of course, there's like, I think when you take parents that are from another culture and put them in American culture, there's always going to be issues. Like, especially when you're assimilating. I think there was a lot of tension between, you know, decisions that my parents would make for
Yes.
me and then things that my grandmother or
Yeah.
my grandmother was like the matriarch of the family and she was the one that was kind of more strong-willed and had more opinions about how things should be done. My dad's mom, I'm saying. So usually
Yeah.
when I'm saying my parents, I'm really referring to my dad's parents
Yes,
just because
and because they lived with you guys for the
with
majority
me.
of the time, yeah, I'm sure your mother felt that okay, she's my mother-in-law, so you
Yeah,
kind of
but
go with what she
actually,
says for at
yeah,
least
but actually,
in
like
the
my mom really like took in like they have a very special relationship. They did not always get along, but the way that my grandmother, my dad's mom, showed up for my mom when I was born and the kids were born, like, so those things were like, I think my mom came out of it as like, I don't know that my mom could have done this for me. Like, so there
yeah,
were
yeah,
things like she appreciated with the mother-in-law. Now there were things me growing up my grandmother still had a lot of growing up to do. So there were still things that like she would make comments about the way my mom would do things or the way that my
yeah,
mom would, I don't know, she made comments and I hated it. I didn't like it growing up. But my grandmother was very involved with parenting me as well. And so it was like there were certain
okay,
things that she helped with, especially when it came to faith, like Bible quiz or like
hmm,
things with my faith. Like she took a lot of time to like teach us the scriptures, my grandmother. And so that was something like I'll never like walk away. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
I'll always appreciate that. I always remember that she did that for me. But things like that that I feel play a really big role in like just me,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
she played such a huge role. My grandmother played such a huge, my grandparents, both of them. My grandmother, when she started working as a nurse at the hospital, ended up getting a job for my grandmother. I was sorry, ended up getting a job for my mom as well at the same
For your
hospital.
mom.
So they
Okay.
worked together.
Okay.
So it's like
Okay.
you're involved with someone that closely in and out of the
Yeah.
house. Like, they
Yeah.
had to learn how to make things work.
How to
And my
get
mom is
along. Yeah.
yeah, my mom is definitely the lesser strong personality out of the two of them, and so she'd learned to, figure it out. She figured it out and she made it work, and it was not always easy, and she was sensitive at times, but nowadays, I would say in the last like 10 years, I feel like their relationship has flourished, especially the way that my mom had taken care of my grandfather at the very end.
Yes. Yeah.
It
At the
spoke
end. Yeah.
volumes mother and to my dad.
Yeah.
And so I think many people have appreciated for her for how she is. Kind of
Yeah.
like my grandmother now will even say like she feels that her daughter-in-laws are more of her children
Sure.
than her
Yeah.
own daughter, like which
Yeah.
is like crazy to say. Like so just the
Yeah. Which is
closeness,
an
the
amazing
way that
legacy. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the way that you could depend on, with the way my grandmother feels full trust in the fact that, like, if anything were to happen to her and she was bedridden, she knows for a fact my mom will take care of her. And, like,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful to see. And so I want my daughter to, like, see that and, like,
Yeah.
value the importance of family and
Yeah.
how important that is. And although, yeah, you're an American child and there's going to be things that your mom and dad do differently than my mom and dad. Like, I was thinking of her, but I'm like, there's differences that me and John, my husband's name is John, by the way. There's differences that John and I will have in raising Mariah that we've already seen and already have had to
Yeah.
confront than my parents or his
Yeah.
parents. And so there is definitely that, but I still feel the value in having my parents around and just having them as like, I don't know, just like another set of eyes. I don't trust anybody else to really take care of them like me,
Yeah.
other than, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't trust anybody else to take care of my kid,
Of
my
of
child,
her.
like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do.
Like them.
And
Yeah.
so that love and that care and that attention is always going to be something valuable for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
No, that's
oh,
absolutely it's I think I think when as I was kind of hearing you talk and I was just trying to think about how to weave some of the elements of your story, I think it's going to be a lot about legacy and family and just the importance of that in the South Indian woman's life or like in anyone's life, but just with pertaining because we went to India this winter mainly because it was my husband's mom and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. And so their wedding anniversary was in September, but he's the oldest of three boys and two of the boys live in the US and one lives in Australia. And so they wanted to do something for their parents, 50 years is a blessing. And so we kind of had this little a get together kind of a party with all the family members and cousins and everybody coming in. And so a large part of that, my brother-in-law did a little kind of a presentation with all the six grandchildren where he basically came up with a list of questions and asked each grandchild to ask uncles and aunts in the family those questions and have them tell stories about their grandparents. And so, what we basically did for 7 days when we were in their house through the whole preparation for this event, and even after that, is go back on some of the stories of their childhood and how they met as a couple and how they got married and the influence of both sets of their parents on their life. And my husband also grew up with his dad's mom and dad in the same house. So he grew up in the house that his grandfather built and his father grew up there, and my husband and his brothers, they grew up there. So it's still the same house, which is where we all go and live. So just to have the legacy of the grandparents, in their lives, and his mother's mom and dad lived a street down the road, and they would come over every day and talk to their daughter and meet their grandsons. And so what while, like you said, there are challenges in that. You have different wills, and you have the personalities clashing with each other, and especially when you have the joint family kind of a system, it's almost that there's no concept of my personal space, or like
That's
everybody is
that's
in each other's business, which
mm-hmm.
which we have a lot of in the US. Like we live in these big houses, and I've got my own space and you've got your own space, and we were all there together as a family. So every one of us, so between my husband and his brothers, so we are like a group of 12, because each one has two kids, so we're four, and then his parents, so we're 12 people plus two, 14 people, everybody in the same house planning for this event. And there's really no, like everybody is in each other's, you don't have any space to really think for yourself. You're you're kind of in a group, and you have to do it as the group kind of goes along.
Right, right.
But in the process of hearing the way that God worked in their family, and kind of the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and son-in-law and father-in-law and brothers and uncles and aunts and siblings, you see, like you said, the good outweighs the bad. you know you
Right.
we can get caught up in the bad at times, and we can kind of lose focus on, and sometimes we let the bad get too much, and we kind of get overwhelmed by it. um, and I think it's okay to take a little bit of space now and then for
I
yourself. Yeah.
I think that it's just knowing where the line is, like,
Yeah.
because I mean, like, I do music professionally, and that was not something that was encouraged. So it's just like you need to know for yourself
Yeah.
where that line is. And I'm sorry if I hope this video is not going anywhere because I'm
It's
also
not going anywhere. No, I
okay.
promise you,
Okay,
I'm not
I
gonna
figured
put
as
it.
much. I figured as
I
much,
didn't
but I
want.
just
Yeah.
like
No,
I
because
just gotta
when I
feel
started to do it, I had some people showing up in their gym clothes, and they were like, "Please don't put this out somewhere." I said, "No, no, no. If we do need to get a snippet from you in the future, we will do like a retaping of a snippet, or like a word of wisdom or
yeah.
something." Because I don't know.
My
Sam has a
laptop
lot
was
of ideas in his head.
yeah, my laptop was dying, so I just needed to get a new
Yeah, I think
laptop.
it's good to have. I think, like you said, maybe those boundaries. It's helpful to have a
Yeah,
little bit of that.
and that is something that I still find to be a big issue in the
Yeah,
culture. And I think
yeah,
that is something even for my own self and my, like the concept of autonomy is not a thing. And that is just, I think that's problematic in many ways because
yeah,
it does not create um, an awareness of
mm,
physical self, but also just emotional self. And so you come out with people, and this is the issue, because I have a lot of appreciation for the culture, but this is one issue that I have with it, and especially with South Asian women. We come out with women who don't necessarily always believe in themselves or don't
mm,
give themselves credit or sell themselves short.
yep,
And it kind of perpetuates a weak kind of submissive, and I don't even like to say submissive in the same sentence as weak because that insinuates that submissive is weak, which I don't
sweet, yeah,
believe it is. But it's just like weak women who have no true understanding of autonomy or self. And
yeah,
I think even having those kind of conversations with women now in that are grown up in India it's very taboo. Like even if I talk to my mother-in-law about this, she feels like that's a very American thing,
Yes. Yeah.
or your identity comes from the Lord, and which all of that is true, but I mean, and I'm sure there's a I don't know if, I mean, I'm sure in your research you might have noticed, but as in India especially, I still find that a lot of times it is very misogynistic. So it's just like
Mm.
women are not given
Mm-hmm.
really a lot of, um, you know, regard for what they would like or
Yeah.
what their choices are. And I can see it even in the way that, like, ministry wise, I see it in the way that I get
Mm-hmm.
paid in America for for things that I do, and the way that my mother-in-law gets paid in America, or my
Mm.
mother-in-law gets paid here for any sort of
Yeah.
ministry. Like the way that people give her money and the way that people give me money are already very different. And
Yeah.
that's very tough to, I know that's not something you can overcome in a day, but I do
Yeah.
feel that a lot of the people, I think one of your questions asks, like, do you feel like there's hope, or there was like a
Yeah.
question you asked,
Yeah. There's hopes or dreams for future generations in the role
future
of women.
generations,
Yeah.
or like, what do you think the future of, how do you feel about
Yeah.
the future of
Yeah.
Asians?
Of the community.
And
Yeah. The Indian community.
I'm like, although I do feel like there is that language thing I think we are going to lose, I would hope that, um, I think with the grandparents being in America, I would hope that there's a generation that still holds on to the values of the Indian culture and passes the importance of that down, while also standing against some of the,
Mm.
um, toxicity or the, um, I'm trying to think of the right word, standing up against like some of the, yeah, toxicity, or like just the bad stuff that comes with
Yeah.
the culture, like boundaries or autonomy or sense
Mm.
of self or like confidence and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because this is something that my husband and I talk about this a lot. Um, a lot. It comes up in um it's interesting. This is a conversation that's never very far away from, I think we spoke about it even yesterday night, and then a friend of mine called, and then I'm glad that she called because it stopped us from going into a fight about it, because um I have studied this kind of, I've looked at this for so many years in the Indian community because I'm 45. I'll be 46 in a couple of months. And so I have noticed the generation of women change in India in my 22 years of marriage. I have seen there has been a tangible shift in the way
Mm,
women live. The misogyny is still there. There are people in our family life, our cousins, where we have seen broken marriages because of men who are just just bad men. They do bad things, and they're just bad men. And but then I've also seen this generation of women, especially when we were in the CSI church, we saw a number of younger couples. And so I'm 45, so some of those couples are maybe 10 years younger than us by now. Some of these young women, I don't necessarily know if they have a clear idea of what it is that they want out of life, but they definitely had the ability at a younger age to articulate what they did not want their marriages to look like. And so um, some of those went the wrong way because they were like, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be cooking and cleaning and looking after the home. We want autonomy to do whatever we want to do. And these are girls who are raised in India, and they just left and they walked away from these marriages. And the parents didn't know what to do. And um, then there are others who have stayed in the marriage and they found a way to make it work, but they have found a way to draw very clear boundaries. Um, And I have often looked at them and I have wondered if it's worked out for them. For some, it's worked out, and for others, the guys will sometimes say in a kind of like a sarcastic or a funny way, "Oh my gosh, I can't do anything here because she's the boss, she takes care of everything." And it'll be like a joke, but you can kind of hear some of the tension
Tension.
between the
Yeah.
two of them, like, this is ideally not what I want it to be,
Yeah.
because 22 years ago our marriage was arranged. It was very structured, like his mom and dad met my mom and dad and my aunt, and boy sees girl's picture, the girl sees the boy's picture, and it was arranged. I actually wrote a piece about it for CT magazine for 2 3 years ago, and it's something that I talk about a lot. But I had to understand how marriage was meant to make me holy and not make me happy. And that was like a period of close to 10 years of digging into my heart to figure out what it is that I want out of this marriage. Is it to glorify God? Is it to honor, like our family that we have? And is like, do I just want my way, and I want to, because there are times where you want what you want. You need to wrestle with God to figure out, okay, this is what I want, Lord. How am I gonna, how does this align with your will for my life? And you add the culture and his formation and my formation, everything into the mix, and try to figure out how do we live this life of mutual submission to each other in obedience to Christ in a way that's beautiful and not toxic or feel like one person is controlling the other. Because we've seen relationships implode because the woman has been so controlling of the man, and this guy doesn't even have the strength to say, I don't like this. And I've actually been very surprised to see that in Indian marriages, to see, because most men that I have encountered usually have a lot of pride in them because the way that they're raised. And we've had some friends whose marriages have just kind of blown up, and it's the woman who's kind of made some of the decisions which have led to that implosion. And so I have seen that toxicity that you speak of, and almost this kind of a passive aggressive way of behavior that women in India have.
Yeah. Yeah.
You look
No,
passive
I
on the
get it.
outside, and then behind
I
closed
can't
doors,
stand it. I'm very,
I
I'm very New York. It's like what you see is what you get. I have no
what you
time for
get.
passive aggressive behavior.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
not passive aggressive either. Very Enneagram one, extremely, like, I'm a one and my husband is an eight. So we're like this toxic
Wow.
combination. Every time I tell people that, they're like, "Oh
Wow.
my gosh, how did the two of you get
That's
get along?"
amazing.
It is. It's a very but my mom is not passive aggressive. She's very type A as well, and so I have a hard time with women who can look on the outside like, okay, we'll just do it this way and whatever you want, and then behind closed doors, there's a whole 180 that's going on,
Right.
and
Exactly. I get
and the guy doesn't know what hit him because and then he comes out of it, and so we we've been married for 22 years. We've lived in the US for 20 years, and I think we've gone back to India 18 years in a row. We go back every year. Like
it.
every year we go back. And for the longest of time, my husband would only get 2 weeks off from work. So he would come with us and then leave me and the children in his parents' house. So I've spent the majority of my married life with our kids in his parental home. So I understand the way their family works and the way the dynamics work. And so now that we're, kind of the kids are grown up and we're still going every year, now we both can kind of understand, okay, so this is the reason why you are the way that you are, because this is
Mhm.
how you've been formed by your grandparents, your mom, your dad, your uncles, aunts, everybody the same. But yes, I think for Indian, South Indian women in North America, I think I would hope that they would figure out how to draw boundaries I guess in a less toxic way. There's got to be a healthier way to do it because there's a lot of divorce and a lot of brokenness in a marriage. I had this Malayali girl from Brooklyn contact me on Instagram out of the blue after she read something that I wrote, because she felt that her husband had no interest in the marriage, and they've been married for almost 10 years and they have a little boy. And it was just the oddest conversation that I'd ever had. And there wasn't much that I could do except to encourage her because he's just very, I think he's depressed, like, medically, he doesn't want to spend time with her or spend time with their son. And he doesn't talk to his mother and father, and they both grew up in this Malayali home in an Indian church. And it's just very, very strange to. And she's like, I just read what you wrote and I felt that it encouraged me, so could you give me some advice? And it was just heartbreaking to just hear her, just the struggles that she's going through. And I see this pattern in the Indian community, that it's hidden. And I'm kind of hoping that the mental health, the doctors and the professionals can kind of tap into it to figure out why. Um, we have a friend in our CSI church. We've known her since fifth grade. She's 30 now. She's a Malayali, and she told us once she came home for this, like, Auntie, I don't want to marry these Indian boys, these Malayali Indian boys, because they're all such mama's boys. They come home to do laundry. They come home to get, food. I don't want to marry a white boy because I feel like he won't fit in with my cousins and the community. But I can't marry these Malayali boys. They're they're so obsessed with their mothers that I don't know what to do. And she's 30, and she wants to get married. And
Yeah.
it's really hard. But
No,
I'm gonna.
I see it. I see what you're saying, and I think that there's a lack of self-awareness that needs to happen. Like I think more people need to be, even just the conversations that we're having right now. Like I don't think this is something that parents are willing to talk to their kids about, and I think that's part of the issue. And so then they get into these marriages, and mind you, they get into marriage based off an American perspective of what
Hmm.
marriage is. And
Yep.
then there's the
Yep.
Indian side of it, which I don't think I would go to say that a lot of the Indian marriages that I viewed growing up were are probably not healthy. And so then
Yeah.
you're just like kind of going into this like doe-eyed, and you're just like, yay, marriage. And then you're just like, oh wait, this is not at all what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And no one warned me about it. And no one told me that this is going to happen. And there's just a lot of lack of communication. And so I don't fault a lot of my generation for,
Hmm.
I do think some of it is them. Now, I'm not like, discrediting it, but I put a lot of the blame on the lack of parenting or the lack of
Hmm.
communication. And even that, it's like it goes back to like the generations before, right? Like they just did what they thought was the right thing.
was
And
was the right
so there's
thing.
like at some point it's like I find myself in a position when I notice that my dad cannot admit something or admit that something bothered him or like express his feeling. I'm just like, I'm putting the onus on me now as the person that has the awareness to realize
Yeah.
that my dad wasn't given permission to have if expression or to
Yeah.
express his emotions or express his feelings. So that's where I'm like, I am trying to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I know his reaction is not meant to hurt me, but it's really just a
Yeah.
response that's coming from a hurt
Response.
place. And but that's what I'm saying. It takes a certain level of like um humility, like to
Yeah.
get there and to understand that it's not meant to hurt you. Like you have to walk into it knowing who you are. And that's where I'm saying that self-awareness piece is so big because if you're able to go into any situation assured of who you are, whether that's in Christ, whether that's in what your parents have told you, whatever, like you're less swayed by opinions of man or
Yeah.
opinions of other people. And so it's like I can go into a situation with my dad, although he's my dad. I know who I am in Christ. I know what he's called me to be. I know that he's called me to break certain cycles and generational things. And that might start with my
Hmm.
humility and submission in that moment and just keeping my mouth shut maybe, or maybe
Yeah.
waiting until the right moment to talk to my
Yeah.
dad. And it doesn't always mean it's going to be received well, but it's just the delivery, the tone, the way, all of that
Yes.
matters. And so
Yeah.
we just have to like kind of know and walk into it and then teach my child to always
Yes.
respect, but also know where the line is for herself, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
I was more so talking about the autonomy, like, so sexual assault and abuse is a huge thing in our community. And
Oh,
I think
yes.
that,
It's
yeah, so that's
huge.
another thing that I think a lot of girls are not
Yeah.
taught how to,
Yeah.
read their bodies or feel
Yeah.
what is appropriate touch, what is not appropriate touch, what is like no one's teaching us that stuff. So we actually walk into marriage with those things as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
not knowing how to approach sex or intimacy or um and you walk into this and you don't want to talk to your mom about it. You don't want to talk to, like,
Yes.
you're figuring it out with your circle and community of girls who are all just as confused as you. So it's
Confused.
like no one is teaching you the right thing and what
Yes.
compatibility looks like sexually, like things like that, where it's like, and it's easy to say, like,
Yeah.
pray and the Lord will tell
No,
you,
yeah.
but you need people to
You need some
have these
practical advice. Yes. Yeah. Those honest
practical advice,
conversations. Yeah.
open conversation and
Yes.
awareness of the
Yeah.
issues. And so, yeah, I agree that it's a secret thing, but I do think that my generation, this is
Yeah.
where I do have hope for my community. I'm sorry, my generation. I think they're tired of that. And I think
Yes.
they're ready to talk about the hard stuff and they're not
Yeah.
gonna just take yes for an answer or no for an answer.
Yeah.
I think they're really inquisitive and curious. And I don't
Yeah.
think that questioning things means an automatic dismissal. I don't
Yeah.
think that. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
questioning certain values or questioning certain decisions that our parents make, I think that's really just for better understanding. And I don't
Yeah.
think that every value that my parents pass on to me, I'm going to pass to my children. I think
Yeah, it
that there's
doesn't
going to
mean that
be.
all their answers are right. I mean, it was right probably for a different generation. It doesn't need to work the
Mhm,
same way for
mhm,
every generation. And it's very the whole. I mean, the sexual thing and just knowing when to speak up, when not to speak up. And I've what we have also noticed when we talk to other couples, because I end up talking to a lot of women about marriage. Somebody, one couple, she's there. I'm a deacon at church, and so they're under my list of carers, and they've been married for almost six years, and both were raised here, both were born here, raised here, went to college here. It's, she made a comment to me. She said, we're both Malayalis, but we were both born and raised here. So kind of, American in the way that we think and we do things, how but then when it comes to certain things at home, the way that we divide our roles and our responsibilities, it seems like my husband automatically turns and becomes this very Indian kind of a guy where he expects me to do the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and everything,
mhm.
but there's no sense of shared responsibilities. It's like certain pockets of marriage, you tend to gravitate towards your cultural formation, even though you it's not it's not something which you're thinking of consciously. You tend to gravitate towards it without even an awareness of it. And she was like, I don't even know how to talk to him about these things, because if I talk to him about these things, he says, well, this is how my mom did it, or this is how my dad did it. So why should I do it any differently?
Different.
And it's been kind of interesting to kind of talk to them about these topics and be like, you know what, you just need to talk about, you both work jobs, you have a child to care for, figure out what each person can do in the family to make life easier, you know. You have to take turns. Sometimes it's hard and you need to find a way. And the whole sexual do you watch movies? Um,
Yeah.
Malayalam movies. We saw a
Oh,
movie
not
last
Malayalam.
week. Okay, so this is the new movie that came out recently. It's getting a lot of reviews, rave. It's a Mammootty film, and it's a film called Kadal, or it just came out a month ago, and it's a really interesting movie about a couple who's been married for 20 years, and the wife decides to file for divorce after 20 years, because even though they've had a good marriage on the surface, he's a closeted homosexual. And the reason she files for divorce is literally just to give him his freedom to live the way that he wants to live. And because she's been deprived of any intimacy for 20 years.
Oh,
And it's kind of making the rounds because people are,
that's
they're bold enough,
mhm.
because it's a very powerful statement that a woman feels that right to enjoy what is part of marriage, and it's been denied to me for so long. But he's still a good man. He's not a bad man or a bad father. I just can't live with him anymore. You know, it's by the same
Mhm.
guy who made a movie called The Great Indian Kitchen, another Malayalam film, which was fascinating to watch. If you have time, you should watch both of them. They're he really makes very good social kind of, you know, issues, and he brings them to the table.
Mhm.
I'm gonna let you go. I just have one last question as we kind of
Yeah.
um, so obviously you are in an industry which is not the norm for the average
Mhm.
South Indian
Yeah.
girl.
So on top of all the things we talked about, just
On
add
top
that
of
as a
all
cherry on
things, let's just add the fact that you're part of, like, you know, a Grammy winning band, you know, making music which across North America and the world are singing. So how has that you know, that journey, how has your faith impacted that journey? Did you find the fact that you're a South Asian, did that stand in the way getting to be part of this group? And
No.
you know.
Yes and no. Um, I mean, it didn't stand in the way at all because it happened, but I definitely found myself struggling to have confidence in my
Mm,
ability and stuff like that. In the very beginning, when I started, I didn't feel like I can do it. And that was really because I just did not feel like I had any sort of individuation
mm,
growing up. You know, I kind of just fell into this role of like, I want to do the right thing. I want to please my parents. I want to do this, that, and this. But I had music, and that was the only place that I felt like, okay, the rules do not exist here. I can kind of just do what I'd like. But then my parents would be like, no, you have to sing these type of songs and do this type of thing. And then I was just like, okay, I'm just not gonna share what I want to do.
mm.
Hold on one second. I'm just and so that was like one side of it, which is on the Indian side, where it's just like the pressure. And then I
Yeah,
was like the first one to do this. And then there was that
yeah,
pressure of like, I don't want to mess things up. I want to do things the right way. I want to live my life perfect. I want to, like, then I have a kid in the middle of it. And I'm just like, okay, like, then I lost myself. Like, I lost that part of you dies and you
yeah,
become a new thing. And then
yes,
you're navigating a world as a working mother while also managing expectations of your culture
yeah.
and your parents while
And
also
yourself,
dealing
your
with,
own expectations. Yeah,
right, and then also dealing with a predominantly white male dominated industry
yeah,
where you're struggling to kind of prove your value as a woman, but not only that, as a woman of color. So then
color,
it was
yeah,
just like, once I go into those rooms like that, there was that side of it where it's like you get into rooms with people you've looked up to your whole life and then they just don't know how to react because you're just not any, like they're trying to be nice but they say things like I like
Yeah.
Indian food and they only talk about Indian food and curry and it's like I'm more than just curry in my
Curry.
life, like I'm a regular person. You don't have to talk about curry. It's okay. Like I can tell you about my culture. It's fine. Like it's not. So navigating those experiences or even being like I've been called names unintentionally in my industry before. Like and so it's just like navigating that world as well. Like it's hard to not let it wear you down, but I feel like
Yeah.
I know for a fact that I was meant to be in those rooms and that has that like there's no part of my journey that I have tried out of my own volition to be there. So
Okay.
that's been the thing that's kept me going. But I will say being a part of the industry has made me also realize that God is way better, like way bigger and way better,
Mm,
and shows much more grace than I think we've ever realized or ever
yeah.
thought. And I think growing up in a Pentecostal and more legalistic kind
Mm-hmm.
of background, um, those type of things, I'm not meeting a lot of people who have committed some crazy sin. I'm not meeting
Mm,
murderers. I'm not meeting um, people in broken marriages much. Like, so when you're outside, you're seeing that, and you're seeing the impact of God meeting those people where they are, and it's
mm,
incredible to witness because it's not something I would have witnessed in my South Asian culture as much.
yeah.
I get to see God in a different way when it comes to people outside of I'm sorry, when it comes to people who don't look like me. And so I've only
Yeah.
seen him in the confines of the four walls of my Malayali Pentecostal Indian
Yeah.
cultural
Yeah.
background. But when you get to see him in the eyes of other people who don't look like
Yeah.
me, I get to see just how big he is and just how far he'll
Yeah.
go for the people he loves. And so that has greatly impacted my faith. And it just made me realize that the things that sometimes I grew up caring about, or like whether or not I wear jewelry or, things like that,
Yeah.
those things to
Don't
me
matter in the big picture.
don't matter.
That matter.
And those were things that I felt like when I was growing up would separate the holy from the most holy. And it was just
Yes. Yes.
none of these things matter. Like when you've experienced God saving your life, like
Yes.
or like what is jewelry? What do you know? Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and
things
that's
like that. I've
cultural
learned to
formation. That's the cultural
yeah, and I've
formation
learned
which
to
yeah.
really not judge. Like
Yeah.
I think that was another thing. We come from a pretty
Yeah.
judgmental culture. So
Big. Yeah.
yeah, big
Huge.
judgmental. That was something even like my own friends in the industry would just be like, "Yeah, MJ, like when we first met you, I thought you were a little judgy or this or that." And I had to like really look at myself and see it, like
Yeah.
the plank in my own eye. Excuse me, the plank in my own eye, and just notice that like, man, like wow, I did think that I had a leg up on these people when really I didn't. Like, just because I grew up and maybe I didn't, because just because I didn't grow up in a broken home, and
Yeah.
I don't have step
Yeah.
siblings, or I don't have
Yeah.
like no one in my family was in jail or were
Yeah.
incarcerated. Just because I didn't experience that, it doesn't mean that my faith is of a
Oh
better
yeah.
standing. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that these are things that culturally
Oh yeah.
you are taught to see and view people who are different, you
Yeah.
know, as like bad. I don't
As
know.
bad.
And
Yeah. We have a standing joke in our family where I often tell my husband because I tell him that he thinks he's better than your best. Like I'm better than whatever you are best at. So it's kind of like, no, 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 you're not. So it's just a thing where we kind of go back and forth because we always make fun. Like they're all these amazing people. They never make a single mistake. Like, no. So
They do.
yeah, I
We just
think
don't see
we are a judgmental community, and I because we don't see the broken marriages and the broken families, it doesn't mean that there isn't brokenness inside of our many of our homes. Sometimes it's just being held together by a piece of duct tape, and you're just going through the motions trying to get through this life. They just have had a little bit more of the, I don't know, the gumption to get out of it. Pros and cons on both sides, but we're no better than
Right.
any of
That's
them.
what I'm saying. There's no, I mean, there are plenty of marriages in our community that are still together on the outside and very much broken on the inside.
Very much
So it's
broken on
like,
the inside. Yeah.
so it's just not, I don't necessarily know that there's a difference all the time. So it's, we're all in need of God's grace. And I think that's what
Yeah.
I've learned. My faith has been greatly encouraged knowing that God is much, much better than I could have
Yeah.
thought, ever have thought before. And I think that has been, despite the difficulties of managing the expectations of myself and my family and culture or whatever, knowing that His grace is sufficient has been something that I hold on to. So
Yeah.
that's been
So what
really
advice
great.
would you give to some of the younger South Indian women in this generation, maybe pertaining to music or singing or just in life in general as they navigate the church in North America, kind of, life here as South
Yeah,
Indian women?
I
Yeah.
think I think embracing your identity,
Mm,
and yes, your identity in Christ, but also who you are, just the things you like, and not shaming yourself for them, but really individuating and learning to love who you are and who God created you to be because you are made in Imago Dei. So it's like
mhm,
those parts of you that you might shy away from, God deeply delights in. And I
mm,
just think that is something that more South Asian women need to embrace. And I say that because I don't think I really embraced it until 2 years ago when I had my own daughter. And I see
okay.
the world through her eyes, and I just have learned to love and appreciate myself, my body, for what it's gone through, the way that it has held me and supported
Hmm.
me. And I just want my daughter to grow up with that same appreciation and reverence for the
Hmm.
temple that her body is, right? Scripture says that our bodies are temples. And so just wanting her to appreciate who she is in Christ
Hmm.
and who he's created her to be, and learn to love those things. But also allow yourself to grow and to change. And like I think
Yeah.
there's this thing with this I think there's a thing within South Asian, I don't know if it's just a women thing, it's men too, but it's like, oh, I've been this way my whole life and I can't not be anything else. But it's like, hey, no, you're allowed to change. Like change is good. Embracing
It's
change,
such a cop out,
embracing,
right?
yeah, like embracing the things, maybe even the circumstances that come through your life, and just embracing them and realizing like, had this not happened to me, I would not have maybe become this person that I am today.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me, like um had I not gone into counseling or failed a few classes, had I not done these things, had I
Oh
not
yeah.
any of those things happened, I may not have ever gotten into music. I may not have ever gotten into,
Yeah.
where I'm at right now. And I think every stage and part of the journey is intentional, and appreciating each part and embracing the change that comes with it is the key to growth. And so I
Yeah.
would say and encourage, I would say that to South Asian women, I would say embrace your identity, learn to love yourself, and then embrace change and what comes with it.
Thank you very much. I super appreciate you making the time to stay up so late. It's
Of
horrendously
course. No,
late.
I love this.
So-
I'm passionate about these type of conversations, and so
Oh,
in any way,
this is all that I actually do. I mean, I thought I would start I thought that when I started to write, I would write about just about the Bible and scriptures and the lessons that God has taught me, and that is what I love still. But there's this unique space that I have found myself, and my husband and I, we keep finding ourselves in this space about this immigrant culture, especially with the Indian community. We keep landing back there, and now with our son in college, he kind of moved away from a lot of his Indian stuff when he was in high school, and then
mm,
went to college and discovered that, maybe the white people don't really see me as one of them as much as I see myself as one of them. And I
mm-hmm.
kind of have to lean into my Indianness a little bit more, because even though they accept you because you're a Christ follower, they don't see the Indian part of me, right? And so he's kind of leaning into that a lot more, and getting involved in South Asian University and all those other
Oh, love
things. And so we end up talking about that so much with the youth of our CSI church and his friends and all the Indian kids who come to our home and just talk about
that. Yeah.
it's so hard to be Indian in this white kind of a
Oh,
world. But have you explained to all your friends that curry is not necessarily one Indian food? That there's
yeah,
a
I have.
huge repertoire, and Malayali food is not the same as butter chicken and naan.
Exactly, and that's the
Have they
story that I'm
embraced
gonna
it?
tell you. That's the
Have they
story I'm gonna have
tried
to
it
tell you.
and they've embraced it a little bit? Have
Yeah,
they
like,
been open?
and I've I've realized, like, hey, if this is the only reason I'm here to just expose them to something that's different, then great. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
like I'm very much like open to talk about my culture and community, and I share about it quite often, and just the struggles of it, the